And without further ado, what's up, Josh?
Hey, how's it going, dude?
It's going great, man. Listen, I am going to absolutely turn the mic over to you in just a second. Josh and I met a couple of years, well, officially, personally, face-to-face met a couple of years ago. And oddly enough, we had one of our best conversations over margaritas.
Shocking.
Which, you know, some of the best conversations happen over margaritas. And
the way it works.
Happy Hour Friday, I figured it was worth mentioning. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Josh, and tell us who you are, what you're about, what you do, man.
Hey, my name's Josh Hillis, and I wrote a book called Fat Loss Happens on Monday like 6-7 years ago almost now. And I'm writing a couple more books. I am a personal trainer by trade, but the last 5 years especially, I've been mostly coaching food habits or food skills, depending on how you want to say it. Basically, we coach food from a behavioral perspective. And I do that with clients, and I've run groups that do that with clients, and I also mentor trainers on how to do that as well.
Awesome. And you mentioned behavioral side of things, and we talked about that over the years, and you know, both in person and over Facebook.
Yeah.
Behavior is probably the driver, right? I mean, emotions and behavior are probably the drivers for the decisions people make around food and fitness.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about what you found in the research and what you find in real life.
Okay, so what most people's perspective on food and weight loss, most of my clients are weight loss clients, right? So they're trying to lose weight, and mostly what they've seen is they've seen different kinds of diet perspectives and magical foods and cleanses and all kinds of rules and things like that. And what we see in the research is that that's about the least effective way you can go. It's not that it doesn't work. It absolutely works for a small subset of the population. But for most people, like rule-based diets are really ineffective. In fact, there's a bunch of stuff. One of the studies I found actually said that that like a black and white relationship to different kinds of foods, like rules about certain kind of foods, is the #1 psychological predictor of weight loss failure. So it increases binge eating, it increases emotional eating, it increases food reactivity. That's where people feel like when they see a certain kind of food, they have trouble not eating it. It increases all the behaviors we don't want, and it decreases the behaviors we do want. The behaviors we do want are we want people to eat meals when they're hungry. We want them to stop when they're full. Actually, that's it. That's what we want people to do.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.
Well, so here's the flip side of that. Like obviously it's like pretty simple, but most people have spent most of their lives practicing not doing that. They've either been on diets where they've been practicing not eating when they're hungry, or they've been emotionally eating, like eating when they're not hungry. They've had free days where they eat way past full. They've had cycles of like restricting a lot because they're on a diet, and so like being hungry all the time and not eating, to like falling off and eating everything they see, and so I totally get that people have decades of practice not eating when they're hungry and not stopping when they're full. So we break those down into sub skills, so that way we can teach them. Right.
That's so people don't think of dieting and nutrition as a skill set.
Yeah.
Right? Something, and I think you said that to me a few years ago over margaritas, oddly enough.
Right.
And it stuck with me. And I remember it kind of stuck with me. And you said that learning how to eat is a matter of learning a set of skills. And it's like that is just like that's so logical as to be possibly true. You know, it can't be true, right? I mean, it can't be.
Right.
But it is, right? And it's no different than strength training, right? Strength training is the application set of movement skills to the incremental progression of load movement, right? Or load bearing.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that if your skill set is weak or thin, your success is going to be limited.
Yeah.
Right? So what are some of the skills that go into that skill set for people that you think are commonly lacking in, let's say, rule-based diet plans?
Yeah. First, I just want to highlight how completely freaking rad it is that you likened it to strength training, because I think that strength training is actually the best metaphor for food skills that there is. And the more that people can treat their food skill practice like they treat strength training and like like building skills in incremental progression, the better it works. So I love that as like a metaphor. I'd say that one of the sets of skills, let's start with stopping when you're full, right? So stopping when you're full. Most people eat too fast, so they miss the part where they're full. They eat distracted, like watching TV. And studies show that not only if you eat while you're watching a screen, not only do you eat more at that meal, you actually eat more at the next meal. There's a whole world of crazy research on that. It's really funny. So they eat too fast. They eat without screens. They don't check in with their stomach. They don't check in with their stomach during the meal, and they also don't check in with their stomach after the meal. You could take those 4 skills, and you could say, okay, I'm going to eat slower, right? But eating slower actually isn't like an actionable thing. So I usually have people either like put their fork down between bites, or take a sip of water between bites, or put the sandwich down between bites, or whatever that slows people down. Which I also have to say about slowing down. Not only does it help people notice that they're full, most people also report enjoying their meal, but more, right? They actually got to like be there with their meal. So they could put the fork down between bites. They could eat without screens. They could check in with their stomach mid-meal. And checking with their stomach mid-meal is kind of a most people just aren't used to like checking in. So so sometimes we call it halftime, or but it's this idea of like halfway through the meal, how does my stomach feel? And then kind of like looking at what's left on their plate, being like, how, like kind of guessing, is this about the right amount, or is this too much? Is it too little? All those are okay. And then they self-check. Like they self-check 2 different ways. They can self-check like an hour later and be like, how did I feel? Did I get that right? Or they can self-check with the next meal that they eat. If the next meal, they're hungry like a half hour to an hour before the meal, they know that they got that right in terms of when to stop. If they're hungry like 3 hours before the next meal, way too little. If they never get hungry before the next meal, too much. So those are all.
And that's, you know, what's great about that is that's a definable set of skills, right? So you can, and not only is you're given a context.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm big on context specific stuff. And I think that we like to say, you know, nutrition specific, sports specific, whatever specific.
Yeah.
What about the context of all this stuff, right? So, you know, when I talk to coaches about training athletes, and one of the things that I love to fall back on, and I heard this from Toby Brooks many, many years ago, the idea of context specificity is more important than sports specificity, because it allows us to develop a set of skills that can be broadly applied across varying universes.
I love that.
If we create the context that we want to improve around diet and nutrition, and then we look at the skills and say, are these context specific to what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
We create a set of rules now, or a set of skills, not rules, pardon me, set of skills now that can be transferred into any nutrition situation.
Yeah.
Right. And really any diet plan. Like my wife and I are flexible keto eaters. So we generally kind of vary, and we honestly don't measure it that much because it does such a good job of satiety for us.
Yeah. Right.
We know sort of how much when we're craving green vegetables, we know what's up.
Yeah.
Like we need some damn green vegetables, right? That's
right.
What's up, right? It's not, we're craving green vegetables because what we really need is chocolate candy. No, we're craving, right? It's what our body's needing, right? It's really easy to understand that.
Yeah.
So often, and I'm wondering what your experience is with this, right? Without that set of context-specific skills, without that set of skills to apply to any situation, what happens for people when they get in a situation where they feel like they're craving a specific food, or they miss a specific food, or it's just something they think should be in their life, and you and I know it's just not a good choice? Like, what happens if they don't have that skill set?
Okay. That's a big question. So first off, one of the things that I'm working on with all of my clients actually is a certain level of flexibility, right? And so it's one of those things where there isn't anything that's going to be cut out forever, right? You talk about like all the skills I just mentioned, you could actually do with pizza. It's just harder, right? Like, so, and this is where it gets into like, there's like the intuitive eating skills, and there's also like, can we use some like, can we use something slightly a little external to help us out, like plating appropriate portions, right? It's easier to stop when you're full when you plate appropriate portions, and like it's hard to notice with pizza, but if I played it ahead of time, it's easier. But like you could still play the same games, right? So one of the things that I'm looking at is not having anything off limits, such that people get to distinguish what their cravings are, and they get to see, and when they get good. So this is another set of skills. Sure. So when they can distinguish between cravings versus like really wanting, like it's an anniversary or a date night, you really want to enjoy something little, they actually have choice, right? So the way we distinguish cravings, we've got three different filters. One, so let's say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, oh man, I really want a Snickers bar, right? So first we go, okay, so am I hungry in my stomach? And they actually check, because like when you're hungry, you can actually feel it in your stomach. And I've had a lot of clients that are like, nope, I'm just bored, or I've got a headache, or I'm tired, or all these different things that they're used to eating a snack for that aren't hungry in my stomach, right? The second filter is, am I hungry for a meal, or am I hungry for like one really specific thing? Like, oh, do I want, chicken and salad and rice and beans? Nope, I just want a Snickers bar. Okay, you're not hungry. Which the key thing there is, if they're really hungry, they go eat a meal. Anytime they're hungry, they eat a meal, right? That's huge, because my clients don't go hungry, right?
Now, Josh, are you insinuating that the people from Snickers were wrong? Because that's a national campaign. It seems to me that they wouldn't put that on TV. I see how those people change. I see it.
You're right. It went from Betty White 1 minute to...
Right. It's an amazing transformation. I don't know about that. I'm going to do some research on that and get back to you.
You got me. I'm going to have to check. And then, there was a third thing. I don't, clearly if it's Snickers,
check with the stomach. See what you're actually hungry for.
Yeah. Check with the stomach first. See what you're hungry for. And then, I don't remember, but it's in that same kind of world where it's like, where basically what we're doing is we're giving people a couple different filters or a couple different tools to check out, like, hey, what's going on here, right? And a lot of my clients are just bored, or their boss just yelled at them, or they just saw some M&Ms in the snack room, or whatever, right? And when they can distinguish that, and again, like, it's huge. I cannot beat this dead horse enough, that when they're hungry, they're allowed to eat a meal whenever that shows up, right? That's so huge. So they get like, oh, I'm having this craving and I'm not going to eat. When I am hungry, I'm going to have food, right? I'm going to have a meal. So, but I would say that you're asking like, what happens when people don't have skills like that? What happens when people don't have skills like that is they snack all the time on things, and snacks aren't physically or psychologically satisfying, or satiating, right? They don't create, for the amount of calories you're getting, they don't create enough fullness. And so it's not that people should never snack. Like most of my clients eat 3 meals a day. And sometimes to make a workout work, or if there's a huge gap between lunch and dinner, it's going to be like 8 hours, they'll put on a snack. But as a general rule, we're cutting out most of the snacking, because that ends up making them more hungry. It's calories that are kind of mindless. It's like they're trying to solve like an emotional problem, or a procrastination problem, or a boredom problem, or all these things that could be handled with maybe doing some deep breathing, or going for a walk around the office, or we can work on acceptance. Huh?
Something other than food.
Yeah, it's a non-food problem. Right. Yeah,
that makes sense. So we talked a little bit earlier, and I know you're working on a couple of books, and one of them is on emotional eating, right? So, a big, and I think you and I both agree that doesn't happen very often, but if 3 or 4 people in America to whom it does happen.
I'm hoping those 4 people buy my book.
There you go. All 4 of you So that's going to be $32,000 a copy, but you each got to buy one so Josh can get a house.
Exactly.
But in reality, we both know, we can joke about it, we both know that it probably, when it comes to diet and nutrition, if we could say there's one individual problem that outstrips all the other ones, and when I say individual, it's attached to individuals, not a societal or structural problem.
Yeah.
So the problem that every individual brings to the table, it's got to be emotional. Right? We all do it. I just gave you an example. My wife and I did it this weekend. We knew that we were aware of it, so it was, we can deal with it. Tell me what you think is going on with us in America, why we're such emotional leaders, and what are some of the things that you're teaching that help people get over this thing?
Oh man, I'm gonna ruffle some feathers on this one. This is not gonna be what people want to hear. But so just some context, where this is going to be coming from. This is going to be coming from contextual behavioral sciences like acceptance and commitment training, sometimes acceptance and commitment therapy, and maybe second wave positive psychology, and some of these more like modern motivation sciences, right? I think part of the problem is we think we're supposed to be happy all the time, and we have trouble accepting like the normal ups and downs of life. And so I especially get like super type A clients that like really feel like they're supposed to be happy all the time, have a perfect attitude all the time, good vibes only, optimism. I'm for all those things in a balance, right? But if you think you're supposed to be happy all the time, and what happens is either you use food to suppress it when it shows up, or you come up with some other way of suppressing frustration, sadness, normal ups and downs of life, and then it rebounds harder, and then you use emotional eating to suppress it, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds really, really, really silly, but a big part of what we work on is normalization, and letting clients know that it's actually normal and healthy, and it's okay to be sad sometimes, and like terrible things happen, and it's okay to be sad about that. And if you look at the research on, especially in ACT, they've got a lot of evidence that if you're able to allow yourself to be sad when things are sad, you're actually better able to be happy when things are good.
Absolutely.
So we work on tools like diffusion, which diffusion is kind of like a fancy name for separation. Being able to have a little bit of distance from your thoughts and feelings such that you can be with them and live your life. And so sometimes that looks like thought labeling, or sometimes that looks like looking at a feelings wheel and picking out what you feel. Because a lot of times when people are emotional eating, they just feel bad or they feel stressed.
Right. And
it's really, really, really weird. But just the act of going like, oh, you know what? I'm sad, actually gives them a little bit of space. Be like, oh, I'm sad, and I'm going to go take care of myself, and I'm going to go hug my pet, or I'm going to call someone I love, or I'm going to go for a walk. Or, you know what, I can't do any of that right now. I'm just going to like be sad for a minute while I'm doing my work at work, and maybe I'll call someone when I get home, or maybe I'll do some, and there's a lot of tools around diffusion. But mostly they come down to this thing where you're like, okay, it's normal to have uncomfortable thoughts. And it's normal to have uncomfortable feelings, and being able to notice that those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings are going to come and go in their own time allows us to be with them and still take actions that fit our values, even though we're humans and have all kinds of feelings.
That is, you know what? And the funny thing is, you're probably right. It probably is controversial to people who don't want to think past their ass, right? I mean, that's
right.
It really comes down to. So,
yeah.
Just for all of you listening to this podcast, if you can't think past your ass, you probably want to hang up now.
Wrong podcast for you.
Exactly right. This is it's Friday happy hour, and you're going to be happy. Goddamn. So interestingly enough, right? So the happiness or the feeling that you need to be happy all the time actually creates a form of social stress that the HPA axis is incapable of managing.
Yeah.
We don't have. Yes. We're not evolutionarily pre-inclined for that. It's just not there. So what you said about getting through the emotion as opposed to running away from it or thinking it should be there, that's what we're designed to do, right? So I'm doing a lot of what I'm doing right now. In fact, right before we got on this call, I was working on it. I'm writing about stress and how the body, how we've evolved, A, to become more prone to it, B, to become more responsive to it, and C, to become more expectant of it. And like I have literally like studies that they've seen that the structures in the brain that anticipate stress have gotten bigger in humans over time. The structures that respond to stress, and then the structures that are supposed to ameliorate stress and return us to rest and digest, have actually gotten smaller. So we're more predisposed for the saber-toothed tiger that will never come.
Right.
So we go looking for stress.
Right.
And when you said that people, think they have to be happy all the time, it went, wow, bingo, man. That's one of the things that I've dealt with for years with my clients of all ages, right?
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't I be happy? Well, okay, you just had something happen that 99% of the world would say was good, and you're not thrilled about it, and you're mad at yourself about not being thrilled about it.
Right.
Stress cycle.
Right. Yeah.
And the cortisol is happy as hell to run around in your body.
Right. Totally.
Party. It's cortisol party, right? So how do you? So I know you do a lot of this stuff, right? So people who are struggling with stress, right? And I mean like legit stress. Let's talk about work stress, family stress, financial stress, things like that.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference in how they respond to coaching with you than people who, let's say, are a little more, I don't want to say immune to it, but you know what I mean? There are people who just deal with it better. They ebb and flow, they're fine, right? And there's people who are just type A all the time or totally just in their own stress. How do those types of people, like the people who cruise and the people who don't, how do they each respond to your coaching? What do you do differently with those groups? And what do you see differently in outcomes?
So what I would say is the people that like handle it really well and just cruise, don't hire me. the clientele that I get are no, like so the reality is the clients that I get are like they're like a doctor who's also a mom with 3 kids. They're like executives and lawyers. They're all like have very stressful careers and have kids and probably have like commitments and things that they volunteer for in the community. They've got lots of commitments like and things that really, really, really matter to them, like really matter to them. And so but that may be cyclical. Right. There may be levels where there may be cycles of it throughout the year. Like they may have busier times and things like that. So the thing with if they're in a particularly stressful time, like a more stressful time than normal, like if they've got a big project due or if something's gone on with one of their kids or whatever, then the big deal with them is they're going to have a harder time noticing their hunger and fullness cues than when they're less stressed. So at their most stressful times, or at their most, if they're low on sleep because they're staying up to work on a project or whatever like that, because that happens too. If they're low on sleep and they're high stress, they may have to rely more on things like plating appropriate portions and like putting 4 to 6 hours between meals and snacks to kind of have that as a structure, knowing that right now they're probably going to feel more hungry and it's going to be harder to deal with those cravings than it is normally. So that's the thing that comes up a lot. The other thing is, like I was saying, these do tend to be clients that want to think that they can push through absolutely everything. They can outwork everything. And they're also usually people that have like crash and burn on the most diets. Right. They've been really successful at a lot of diets and at some point they snapped because they've got these like high stress lives. So, or highly scheduled lives or both. So what we're looking at, like you were saying before, these skills that you could apply to different diets or different situations or different or whatever. If they've got these skills, they can use these skills at the office lunch. They can use it, when they get caught up and they can't, like things don't go according to plan and they have to run to the fast casual place on the corner. they can use these skills in much more flexible ways, and much more modular ways that fit into their lives better. And the other thing is, the coolest thing is that when someone's been practicing these skills for a year, they all say that the weight loss and foods takes less energy and way less thought. Takes way less thought than they've ever put into it ever before in their lives, and it frees them up to be more present at work and more present with their family and more present with their commitments. And that's across that's like the big. Usually people are like, I'm stoked to hit my goal, but I'm more stoked that I'm like in my life now instead of.
Yeah, and that's what all this stuff should do for us, right? It should connect us to our family and our lives and the people that we want to be around and things
right.
Right? Free us up from those restrictions. So one of the things that struck me is it's interesting that you have a mix of subjective and objective skills.
Yes, so, yes.
You know, using a visual measure for food, timing meals is very objective. You can set that in place, and if you're stressed, and then for you, those of you who are listening who aren't fitness coaches, this is something that you can take away from this. And I think Josh, correct me if I go off course. If that measuring your food out, or however you want to do that, visually weighing it, whatever, and timing, writing things in, this is what I'm going to eat lunch, when we eat dinner. If you're stressed out and that keeps you on track, that objective skill is one you should be using when your stress might overcome your subjective skill set.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then when you're going well, you can work on your subjective skills, like how does my stomach feel? How do I feel? Am I stressed? Because if you ask your question, am I stressed when you're stressed? Yes, and diet, and that's that, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't need this crap. Get away from me with the skill set. I'm going to get. So that hit me really hard when you were talking about that, because
you nailed it too.
Balance between the two.
Yeah.
And you're welcome. There's a chapter for your book. You're welcome. So you have a couple of projects in the works. I know you have the one book on emotional eating. You have another book in the works that I think is closer to being done. Tell us about that.
Yes. So the next book, the one that I'm finishing up this year, I'm finishing my first draft this year. It'll probably be out in 2 years. So that'll be Lean and Strong. I'm tentatively calling it Lean and Strong, the Psychology of Perseverant Fitness. It's going to be looking at fully updated food skills, all exactly what you just said. It's going to have the objective and subjective food skills, how to use how to treat those like workout skills, how to build an engagement. It's going to have a whole new section on workouts with different levels of volume based on people's like training age, right? So and then the last section is going to be a little bit of self-determination theory, a little bit of contextual behavioral science, the kinds of things that make a difference. So there's a thing called organismic integration theory, right? And it looks at how there's certain people that come into our gyms, and like 1 to 3 years later, this is like integrated into their life, and they know how it connects to their values, and they know how it's important to them, and they almost never have to worry about it again because it's become an expression of who they are. And then there's other people that in 1 to 3 years are kind of still struggling with it in the same way. And organismic integration theory is a subset of self-determination theory that kind of looks at how people make that progression. And so the third section of my book is going to be that. So how people make that progression over years to the point where this is a legit expression of who they are, and they never have to they don't have to fight it it still takes effort, but they don't have to fight it in the same way that 90% of America does.
It probably correlates to having to drag the kid off the baseball practice because they don't want to go to practice, right?
Yes.
So game day, he's up like that, right? And
yeah.
So it's because game day is the easy integration. The practice isn't so easy.
Right. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And so I see what you're talking about. So what do you think is one of the key differences in terms of maybe approach to problem solving between the people who do get it integrated into their lives and the people who don't? Or is there something I'm missing there? Like what's the key mental element for the people who do versus don't?
So the key is values, right? The total key is values. there's sort of like there's like a continuum, and on one side is the least durable forms of motivation, which is going to be reward and punishment, and then there's going to be like the next least durable, which is contingent self-esteem, right? Like if I do this, I feel good about myself. If I don't, I feel bad. Next is like societal or group values, and then the last most durable that I usually talk about is personally identified values. There's actually one after that, which is like things you just love doing just because you love doing them. But so what it comes down to is it's a matter of how far can I get away from reward and punishment, and how much can I get towards like a really good look at what matters to me, what my values are. And that seems like it's a tough thing for people at first. So I'll usually give people like a values list, and they'll be able to like circle some to get a feel for it. You can have people journal about it. There's a lot of interventions around that. And what it all comes down to is if someone interacts with their values about why they're doing what they're doing on a weekly basis, then they integrate. And that's it. So one of the conversations that I have with my clients is like, okay, you've got these goals, and your goals are cool, but like, let's take a look at what values, and for people that are kind of like, what does he mean by values? I might mean like persistence or compassion or challenge or reasonableness or intelligence or like those kinds of things. And when people pick 2 or 3 of those and are looking at their fitness and their food choices from that lens, things go really, really differently. So we'll have people just kind of check in with that from time to time. And then people start to look at like, oh man, here's these other things that I value in my life, like my family and my work and my community commitments and things like that. How does this all play together? Because people don't normally think about that when they think about they're doing their fitness. And then we also get to look at, do my goals match my values? Which sometimes people get that crossed up. So.
And I love that, because it ties in directly with the whole point of this podcast, which is for the 4 pillars of fitness. So for me, it's the physical, the emotional, the mental, spiritual, right? So
yeah,
if you have that emotional intelligence tied into your intelligence and your spiritual intelligence and your physical sense of well-being, those values now, not only are you seeing them as in line with what you're doing, they're self-reinforcing at that point.
Yes.
Right. And once you get to the point where your values are self-reinforced,
yes,
those other goals that you have, they will either have importance to you based on your values or not. But either way, you're probably still going to knock them down, because one of your values is probably knocking your goals down, right?
Right. Yeah.
Probably on that list, or you're not showing up for a trainer. But that's fascinating, because I kept hearing you talk about integration and interaction with values. Most people, I don't think, interact with their values. Tell me what you mean by that. What does it mean to interact with your values?
So this is where it's really, really silly. Like the interventions around interacting with your values really are like circling them on a list of values. Like, oh, I think these are my values, or journaling about them, or having a conversation with your trainer about like, how do you feel like your food skill practice lined up with your values this week? Or do you think it did? And the cool thing is, when people start having that conversation or journaling about that, then or the other thing that shows up is or the other thing that works really well is actually going back to old journal entries or re-looking at what you circle on your values list. But when people are looking at that and they're doing their food skill practice, they're like, oh, I'm doing this because it's the kind of person I want to be. And all of a sudden there is still that goal out there, and that's cool. But there's also just like, I'm going to do this week because it's the kind of person I want to be. And people start saying things like, I'm doing this because it's the kind of example I want to set for my kids, or I'm doing this because I feel so much better. Like I don't feel sick after a big meal anymore, or like it and those things become self-reinforcing in such a different way. in such a different way. And then all of a sudden people aren't stepping on the scale and being like, you know what, it only went down 0.5 pound instead of 2 pounds, like the guy in the commercial, so I'm going to quit. Because they're doing it they're essentially doing it to be themselves. They're doing it to be the kind of person that they know themselves to be, right?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I'm hearing. And I think that's an important thing for people to remember, is that if you're, and I'm going to come around to the transformation challenges in just a second, but because that's such a dysfunctional model, isn't it? I mean, the whole fat loss transformation, and I did.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Full disclosure, we did a lot of them, and we were really good at them. All right.
Right.
So dysfunctional, but the disconnect between people's actual values and a set series of goals to hit, right? Just so massive. And I never even thought about it until probably a couple of years ago. But so I've stopped doing weight or body fat, what I would call a value-based transformation challenge. So you don't win based on how much of something you lose. Our transformation challenge is now, you show up 3 days a week for 6 weeks, you get your first month free. You lose 5% of your own body fat, you get your 13th month free. And if you check in on Facebook every day, we'll give you $50, right? I mean, it's simple. Like, when we put it on our website, the tagline is, this is a transformation challenge everyone can win.
Right,
So call me and say, how do you win? What do you mean, how do you win? It's right there. But tell me about your experience with transformation challenges. And I know you've stopped doing them, right?
Yeah.
As such. And tell me why you stopped and what you're doing instead.
So, like you say, like you used to be really good at them, right? I found that being good at them was terrible if I had people do more than one, right? Like they
have to do more than one, right? If you do it right, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, like, people do 12 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, they hit their goal, and then they stop and gain it all back in like 2 weeks, and then they do it again. And what it seemed like every time we redid it, it felt like it got harder. It felt like it got harder, like the fifth transfer. And I'm like, why isn't this getting easier? Like, it feels like it's getting excruciatingly difficult. And that was the thing. It just, I mean, like, and again, like, if you look at, it doesn't stick. It just doesn't stick for anyone. It's can I white knuckle these diet rules for 12 weeks? And a lot of people can. And the thing is, that's good and bad, you know, like the bad part is that essentially you learned how to do something really hard for a short period of time and then quit. But the quitting is like an integral part of it that's like almost built in. And that's why I stopped. And, that's actually not why I stopped. I stopped because it was ruining people, like, in terms of how they felt about themselves and how they felt about their body and how they felt about food and how they felt about fitness. It would become such a grind, and they felt like a failure every time they gained it back, and they gained it back every time. It was a disaster. So now my basic premise is I want to work on skills that get easier over time, right? If your son or daughter is playing clarinet in 4th grade, then by 6th grade, they'll be better at it. And then by junior high, they'll be better at it. And by high school, they'll be better at it, right? Like, they keep every year you're better. It's easier to do more complicated things. And the older stuff, you know, so that's that's why I'm looking at teaching people how to notice when they're full and how to not snack for emotional reasons.
So two really great things just came out of that little segment right there. You know, and many people who are going to be listening to this, Josh, they know who you are, and, you know, they know what you've been about, right? But for people who don't, Josh is one of the most successful trainers and nutrition coaches that I know. And when he says that there's a value disconnect with transformation challenges that leads people to repetitively fail, which is, I think, a decent nugget from what you said, who you could run more transformation challenges tomorrow if you wanted to and fill them up in a heartbeat, no doubt about it. The fact that you're unwilling to tells me an awful lot about your values and really what's important to you. And you also, the other thing that came out of that, you just named this episode. The
Oh,
name
yeah?
of the episode is No More White Knuckle Diet Rules. This episode,
Perfect.
you said white knuckle diet rules. That was it. We're done. Okay.
Awesome.
It's true though, because what do people do for 6 weeks? They dig in, they go crazy, they empty their pantry, they empty their refrigerator, they live on broccoli, chicken, and rice. They hate themselves, they hate their diet, but they hope they love the scale. And if they don't love the scale, you might as well put a loaded gun in their hand.
Right.
Because they're just going to go do it again, right? And
you
know, I heard the phrase, and I love this phrase: fitness tourists.
Oh yeah.
So you have people who go from transformation challenge, and they always show up. And you know, and if you talk to people in your town who also do them, you'll find there's a commonality among these people. They always show up fat, right? They show up to every transformation challenge 40 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
In spite
it's
of
not their first one.
Might or might not have happened in the last one. So it's a value disconnect. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
Well, and I love the way that you put that, because it's the way people go about transformation challenges is typically the opposite of their values, right?
Right. Absolutely. They've been going to the same church since they were 4.
Yeah.
But they go to a new gym every 6 weeks. It's insane. I don't
right. Yeah.
You know, I don't get it. Like, I don't go to church at all. Like, I understand that. But
yeah. But going to different every 6 weeks would be weird. That would be weird, right? Or like you go for 6 weeks and then I don't know what you do for the next 2 weeks, but
you go to a Catholic church for 6 weeks. You Buddhist for 6 weeks. Go be a Muslim. Just sample everything. You know.
Yeah.
The buffet of religions, the same thing with us, right? I mean, it's craziness.
That's continuity.
Awesome. I got to work that into it.
Right. Totally.
So now you're. I know that we're getting close on the end of our targeted time anyway.
Yeah.
So what else have you got going on? And tell you what, let's back up a second. One more serious question.
Yeah.
I have, at the end of every episode, I do 2 happy hour questions, which I'll get to you at the end with.
Okay.
So you've been around our profession for a while.
Yeah.
As it relates to us as coaches, what do you see as the biggest gap that we have as a group? I know it's a curveball question, man. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm just trying to make sure I got the best answer. The biggest gap is in coaching food. I might extrapolate to everything. I would say that the biggest gap is not being interested enough in the client's experience. That if you ask questions and get really interested, if you've got a little bit of framework where you're like, these are the skills we're working on, the entire rest of it is asking questions about what's going on and being really interested and letting clients talk it through and sort it out for themselves. Because like our clients we get are really smart, and they're just like, they've never thought about it this way, and also they probably haven't reflected a lot. Like they haven't just not reflected on their values. They haven't really reflected on like their food over the course of like a week or anything like that. So just asking them questions and having them reflect, like facilitating their reflection, they'll sort out most of the stuff on their own. And the only thing I might add to that is all of the struggles that they're going through, I would have you normalize. Let them know they're not the only person that struggled with emotional eating. Let them know that they're not the only person that ate more than they wanted to. You know, like the more you can let them know that that's okay, and that you've had clients that dealt with that and got better, but like where they're at right now is totally okay, the faster they get better. Right. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
All right, coaches, if you're listening to this, rewind that, listen to it again, put it on. Get that. Yeah, that's a great point, right? That is an awesome point. Facilitating the client experience by helping them sort out their answers for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just it's so important. It's no different than to give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, right? If I can teach you, recognize when things are going sideways for yourself, you'll be able to stop it sooner.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you're teaching a movement skill, right? And like something's a little off, and instead of telling them, you're like, "What'd you feel right there?
Yeah.
What'd you notice?" Right? They're like, oh, you know what? I could, right? All of a sudden, you talk about a fish.
With my newer clients, a lot of the time when I make a correction, I'll do it mid-set, right?
Yeah.
And the first question I ask them, does that feel different?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I need to know why.
Right.
Figure out why. So if I make the correction and it should feel normal, should feel like what they should be feeling, they've had a couple reps of off.
Yeah.
On. Now they feel differently. I know that they're going to remember that, right? That's tags right into that emotional, your emotional intelligence. So that's awesome right there.
Yeah.
So really quickly, so every happy hour, this is what I do. And at the end, we do the lightning round. I'll give you 2 questions.
Okay.
One is a standard question. Everybody gets it. It has 2 options. You could choose either one or both. I will tell you that Joe Pepe, who I interviewed a while back, who is the Philadelphia TKO winner on CBS, and at the age of 24 years old, still runs a 4.340, and he's white. Very impressive. He answered both questions.
Wow.
But that's not necessary. The second question is kind of a rotating question. They're a lot of fun. After I finish the question, I'll give you the floor. You'll have 30 seconds to answer.
Okay.
And I have a feeling going in that the first question is going to be hard for you, man. I just have a feeling it's going to be hard for you. All right, here we go. You up for it?
I'm up for it.
All right, here we go. First question. And you can answer either one of these 2 questions or both. Who is your favorite superhero and why?
Ooh.
Or who is your favorite Disney princess and why?
Oh man. Oh man, that is tough. So okay, this is so weird. Like the 2 things that I want to say Captain America and I want to say Batman for the absolute opposite reasons. Like I love Captain America because he is so like dead on great about everything, like always doing the right thing. I love Batman because he is so broken, and like what he did with being like so broken and like horrible disaster and trying to make something of that, I think is amazing. And I especially like the Batman episodes where he's like dealing with losing his parents, and he's dealing with being like a little bit off. Like he's just a dude wearing a bat suit, right? And he's you know, like there's sort of a thing there where I think it's cool that he's got so much humanity. And I guess what I like about the new Captain America in the Marvel movies is where he struggles with doing what's right, even against the people that he thought were like grew up thinking would tell him what was right. And so I love the humanity that can show up in both of them.
All right, man. All right, so that's awesome. All right, second question. This one's a little different. So the one absolute guilty pleasure that nobody knows you have.
Oh man. I play like 8-bit Nintendo games when I need a break. Like especially the Castlevania series. I've played through the entire Castlevania series. Well, I skipped number 2, but like 1, 3, 4, and then I'll do that other one. Oh, Dracula X Chronicles. I like when I need a break or when I'm really stressed out or whatever, I play Nintendo games from like 1986.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right, well, folks, you heard it. You heard it first here. Josh's guilty pleasure no one knows about is Nintendo 8-bit games.
Yeah,
like everybody's in pixels pretty much. So
yeah.
All good stuff. All good stuff there. So Josh, tell everybody how can they reach you? Where's the best place to find you? Shoot.
Yeah. So you can always catch me at losestubbornfat.com. That's my website where I write about food skills, and I write a lot about celebrity fitness because I'm forever intrigued by that, and I always get a kick out of it. And that's
Goop fan, are you?
Yeah, huge Goop fan.
Oh Lord.
No. If anyone can't tell that we're like Goop is the worst. And then I've got a book, Fat Loss Happens on Monday, that I wrote a while back, but
which there'll be a link to that book on my website as soon as I get this up.
Awesome. And then I've got 2 more books coming out in the next couple of years that I'm pretty hyped about. Yeah, that's me. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. So if you've got questions, and you are in Denver, Colorado, correct?
Yes, Denver, Colorado.
So if you were in or around the Denver area, you're listening to this podcast and you have struggled with weight loss or just getting your fitness on track, right? Just getting your life kind of integrated. Contact Josh. I guarantee you that you will not be unhappy. He is, in fact, you'll be thrilled because he's an awesome coach and a great human being.
Thanks, man. And I actually anywhere at this point, I do more phone coaching than anything else. So I've got clients all over the world. So
there's even hope for me. So there you go. All right. Josh, I want to thank you very much for being on today, man. I know you're busy.
Thanks for having me on, man. This is so much fun. Like, we should have margaritas again. Like, it's been too long.
Listen, next time we're together, we'll do margaritas. We'll turn on the phone. We'll record another podcast.
Okay, cool.
So, everybody, thank you for tuning in today. I'm really thrilled that Josh Hillis was my guest today, and we'll have him on again at some point.
Thanks, Phil.
Phil Houston. You can reach me at coachphilhouston@gmail.com. At my website, coachphilhouston.com, and through the podcast here, the Four Pillar Fitness Podcast, available everywhere good podcasts are sold and for free. Have a good day, guys.